Donald Mukota. Candid and clear on Capital 100.4 FM, leading the conversation.
This is the second hour of the show, The Deep Dive, and we are now discussing African elections vis-a-vis governance issues. The country is going through some socio-economic and political challenges just a year after we held our harmonized elections. Why is it so that many a time after holding elections in Africa, the economic and political atmospheres tend to go on the negative? That is what we want to discuss tonight. We shall zero in on major governance issues as we try to diagnose the disease that is plaguing our country, and we hope the powers that be will then find the correct antidote to cure these diseases. We have in the studio a socio-political analyst who will help us understand dynamics happening in the country, Mr. Terence Simbi. Welcome to Capital 100.4 FM.
Thank you.
To our listeners, we always value your input in our conversations, so feel free to get in touch on the number 0717 777 for your WhatsApp messages. You can call through on the numbers 0772 269 229 or 495 112. We look forward to your valuable contributions. Now, Terence, let's start off by having you give us an assessment of elections in Africa in general.
Well, before we even go to the assessment of elections, the first thing maybe is to really dissect why do we have elections and really come to terms with some of the developments which has happened in the world over, for us to really come to elections, and where did this election idea come from. So we go to the ancient times. We go to the Greek world, which was the one which really came up with this idea of democracy, where it really wanted to create a governance system where every male citizen in that area, in that state called Greece, could have equal rights in terms of decision making. So everything which wanted to be decided upon in the Greek world, everyone in that environment, in that state, every male citizen was entitled to vote on each and every matter which happened in that. So no citizen was having the right over another citizen in the Greek democracy. So it was really a government of the people. So that's the definition of really democracy. It's the government of what? The people. So the people have to decide on each and every matter. So we move on to the democratic setup which are in the recent times, which started in the American continent, where America was the one which developed this democracy. But a difference from this system which was used by the Greeks was that because it was now a larger country, it was now a larger population, they had to have what we call representation, where these representatives were supposed to mirror in the desires of those populations they were representing in whatever which decisions which were made nationally. So these representatives were supposed to vote on all governmental issues, taking in mind the views and opinions of the state which they represented. So that's the idea of elections. So in an election, what we are really doing is we are really electing someone who's going to represent us. Whatever we want as the communities which are represented in the national government is supposed to be done through the representatives. So the representative does not have any right to exercise his own views, but he's supposed to really supposed to really vote according to the views and perceptions of those in the certain areas. So that's why we have elections. We have elections because we want to be represented in the national government, so that every decision we make, we have a representation in our government systems. So it really starts from us, what we really desire, going to the representative, and he's going to make decision on behalf of us. Not the other way.
Right. I hear you, and thank you very much for that brief background. So let's get to that part where then we need to assess elections in Africa.
Now, what is now the problem now with Africa is that we had this concept after colonization. That's the concept we had, that and we were left with a system from the colonizers which had already developed into other sections, where we now had political parties which were now there. So these now political parties now have national interest rather than the interest of the communities which are there, which are in the certain regions, certain provinces, certain constituencies. So we are having now a clash between the national vision of a party with the local interests within the constituencies. So we are having problems now that instead of selecting representatives which are going to represent the communities, they are now representing a party. That's why elections now are very difficult in Africa, because it's no longer representation of the communities which is now there. It's now a representation of a party. That's why most of the political party, most of the countries which are in Africa have two major political parties which are fighting to get into government now. So that's where we are having all this friction, that where there are two competing parties, the concept now has moved on to a national vision of a party rather than representation in decision making on each and every decision which is going to be made in the government. So
more often than not, I'm sure you've also come across this school of thought. So what is your reaction to people who then say that Africa has got its own kind of democracy, which is different from the Western kind of democracy, which is actually also different from the Asian or Western kind of democracy? Yes,
I think right now the disputes which are also in the African elections are also mirrored in the disputes which are also happening in those countries which gave us this democracy. The United States, it's also in the same problems, because there's the emergence of social media, and the idea that and the idea which was in the first type of democracy which was there in the Athenian democracy, that when a decision is made by a majority, then everyone is supposed to follow that decision. So right now, because of these two polarizing issues which are happening, elections now are very much disputed in every part of the world right now. Even in America right now, they are having disputes. In the UK, they are having disputes. But it's coming from these political parties which were created. And in the American system, they did not create the system with political parties. It's a thing which developed with time. So we have to understand that these political parties which have now gone into the system have the ones which now have killed the representation element which was there in the democratic setup. So we as Africa have just we always emulate the European style, but at its creation it did not have these political parties. So we really need to reevaluate how we're going to move forward as the African continent.
Right. So looking at Africa and Zimbabwe in particular.
Yes.
We hear, of course, that there are what are known as international best practices. Are these international best practices best for Zimbabwe?
One thing I think yes, there might be an international best practice, but I think one of the things we are missing as Zimbabweans is to really sit down and devise our own system. Yes, there are international systems, but there is a system which we have to really devise ourselves, which is what we really want from this system. An example of such a system is South Africa, our neighbor. South Africa, at its independence, it sat down in South African political actors and really devised a system which, right now, you see, South Africa had the election, there were no disputes, but they really went down and said, what do we want from our system? So they really knew that they were a country which had many races. So one of the issues which they wanted is a proportional representation type of electoral system, where all the political parties who attain a certain level because of the ethnicity which is in South Africa. There are Indians there. See, if a political party is formed on the basis of Indian, if a political party is based on a tribe like the Ndebele, if a political party is based on such things, if it attains a certain level of vote, which in South Africa they have 400, so they say total votes divided by 400 seats, anyone who has representation and has a say in their parliamentary system style of democracy. So we need, as Zimbabweans right now, to really define ourselves. What do we really want from this system, and really define ourselves as Zimbabweans? What are the challenges we have with the current system? And that's the way that's the way I can really say, as Zimbabweans, we really need to define our own system, which really works for us and which can deliver efficiency in our systems.
Opposition parties are known to then always maybe complain of rigging whenever polls are held. Sometimes you actually start to hear them contesting the outcome of those elections before they're even held, before even ballots are counted. So these complaints, are they justified? Can we ever get to that point where, like you rightly say, the South African election, for example, it has come and gone, and you wouldn't have thought that there was an election in that country, because even disputes, we haven't had any disputes of the kind of magnitude that we hear across the river.
Yes. Yeah, now, the issue now with opposition parties now, yes, as I have explained at the first, that there were no parties in the election, in the first form of democracy. It was just a simple rule that once there were a majority of votes in any issue which was there, everyone would bind together on that decision and move forward. But now we are having a system where maybe it's a lack of democratic principles which have gone even to the opposition itself, that once we have a 50 plus, then we have to move on, and we have to really come together now and go for that decision, which and really move together as a country. So it's really a situation where maybe the democratic principles have not yet been understood by the opposition in itself.
Right, we've got a call online, 495112. Good evening.
Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Ndaswera
sei mukoma.
China ine democracy yayo, America ine type of democracy yayo. Tinoona kune mademocracy and Republicans two chete. This is vana muZimbabwe. Zaida kuti tigare pasi toona zvakaringana nenyika yedu, kwete kuita mere inotipa nzara munyika munomu. Tagara pasi toongorora semhuri imwe. Wakaenda kuIran, vane yavo, this ana ayatollah vaya, the supreme what wakaenda kune dzimwe nyika, vanoita zvavanoita kunyika ikoko. Saka ini tine kakuwirirana ika gesi district ene ku South Africa, turi pano opposition party diki vanga toda kuda kusumudza nyaya, but DA, a major opposition political party, yakataura yakati no, zvakaitika free and fair. Opposition tinoona twakuda kutorera zvanga zvichiitika muno. Saka kuri kumashuruma political opposition parties kunotipa headache, kunotipa nzara, kune vatungamiri vakaoma musoro, marebels, zvinova zvisingafanirwa kuita mukati menyika panika seZimbabwe ine vana vakadzidza. Iko zvezvi tatarisana nekunana 2026, ndipo pavanofanirwa kushuya vogara pasi vogadzirisa zvese zvinoitika kuZepu, kwete kuti vosaka kutukirira whoever anenge ari kokoko. Zvinonyadzisira hatizvide muno, no place muno mukati menyika ino yeZimbabwe.
All right.
Ndomuonera pandingaite.
All right. Regai tinzwe reaction kubva kuna Terence. Right. Your reaction to what the issues that are being raised here.
Yes, yes, I would agree with the caller that we are in a time which has never been, ever since independence, where the democratic space has been really opened and really there has been cause that let us talk and really come to terms with some of the issues which are troubling our political systems. And I see no reason sometimes where we can resort to issues like protests or something like that when we there is a table where we can really define what we want from our political systems, considering the disputes we have had all this time. So I see no reason why people can really go to really protest if there is a door for us to really dialogue as a mature nation, as a nation which is now 39 years old. We really need to really sit down and really come to terms with some of the options.
So Terence, are you saying that there is nothing amiss if Zimbabwe were to actually sit down and maybe discard of the so-called international best practices and craft its own electoral and political system?
Yes, it is to really, yes. There's nothing amiss about that. There's no really perfect democracy anyway, but it's really a decision where it's really an issue where people should really decide what they want from a system rather than their international based system. They differ all around the world, these systems, but the important thing is that for a nation to come together and really devise its own system according to what it really wants out of that system, and from the challenges which it had from the past.
When you look at the African continent, there's always the issue of revolutionary parties coming to the fore. Would you say that your assessment of then revolutionary parties going into elections, do you subscribe to the school of thought that they want to cling onto power by any means necessary, or there is an element of them also being popular with the electorate?
That's a difficult one. But what I can really say is revolutionary parties. These are people who have really sacrificed their lives, most of them, for freedom and for the sustenance of for really attaining independence in countries. So sometimes when they see opposition parties aligned to some of the powers which in the previous past they were fighting against, they tend to be very defensive on that issue. And but what I can say now is sometimes they have to really also really see that a time for they have to really train new generation of leaders, even the revolutionary parties themselves. But we have a problem where they sometimes really want all the resources for themselves. So that bridge, that transfer of power, that transfer of authority, that transfer of resources must happen, because the danger is some of the times they really assume the machinery or the governance system which was there when they were oppressed. So they use it to the advantage of suppressing some of the opposition parties which have mushroomed. So really here, especially in Zimbabwe now, it's a time where we really need to really bridge now from this revolutionary party to younger generations. I can say younger generations, not opposition, but younger generation of leaders, where this transfer has to now happen, so that the gains of their liberation struggle must also be what they really fought for, must also be carried on by the future generation. So if they work together right now, some of the opposition members right now with the ruling party, there will be that transfer of really that ideal. What were they really fighting for, which is then transferred to the younger generation. So this is the crucial time we are at right now. Mm-hmm. And sometimes maybe people might be impatient because of the challenges we are facing, but it's really a crucial time in Zimbabwe.
All right.
We
will come back to that, the crucial time, and talk about other things around that and what is happening around that issue. But let's talk about the regional and sub-regional election guiding principles. We were talking earlier on about the need maybe for Zimbabwe to sit down and craft its own democracy, what people want and look at and regard as democratic principles. Now, would that then, if, for example, it amounts to probably disregarding these regional and sub-regional instruments?
It's not it's not disregarding these regional sub, but it's really adding on to the principle that for our own democracy as Africa, and especially if you see where countries are thriving right now in Africa, they've really sat down and really defined what they want. You can see Kenya, they drafted the constitution there where they really tried to define what is the role of an ordinary citizen in Kenya. So they divided it into states, their system. We really see a country like Morocco, which is these are the three performing countries: Morocco, Kenya, and Cote d'Ivoire, which are now performing in according to. They sat down and really defined what they really want from the system, from bottom to down, from bottom to up. Mm-hmm. What is the role of an ordinary citizen? And in Zimbabwe, I think the problem now is the role of an ordinary citizen is just to vote on the 31st of 2018 and demand everything it wants. It doesn't know, an ordinary citizen doesn't know his responsibility, that he's responsible for certain things. And it's a real pressure now in our political system that it's winners all. And the political players also are in tight pressure to promise, and sometimes they overpromise because of this fact that it's really an issue that they are expected to be supermen. That's why they're expected to be supermen, and the citizen is totally put aside from this equation. Once you vote for this candidate, everything is going to be okay in a week's time. So we cannot have that. We cannot have that in this system.
Now, locate for us in this whole matrix civil society. So civil society has always been fingered to be supporting the opposition parties. They are seen as championing a regime change agenda and things like that. So your assessment, your viewpoint in terms of the civil society in this whole matrix of elections, disputed elections, democracy, good governance.
For this, I'll go back to the Athenian democracy, which is the first type of democracy. No one was allowed to have a faction or to champion any cause. No one was allowed in that democracy. Once you just came in and say you are teaching the youth of Athens on a certain point, you had they had the ability of ostracizing you. They would remove you from the community, and they would not allow anyone or any one profession to be dominant factors in their democracy. So these are the principles which were there in the Athenian democracy, that no one would champion a cause. All decisions which need to be made were made by everyone in that democracy by the way of 50% and 1.
But can we still go back to the Athenian times?
But the problem now with these organizations, some of them now hinder our democratic practice and our culture. In fact, what I can really bring into the fold here is really going back to our traditional culture, where we have chiefs we champion certain lifestyles which we are accustomed to as the African population, rather than having these civil societies which are sometimes sponsored by other governments, which champion some of these lifestyles which are not even in line with our own traditions and beliefs. So civil society, to me, civil society, political parties, these all have hindered the way our democracy has really fed over time. So I don't really I don't really see their role in this political system which we need to craft.
Let's take a contribution via WhatsApp from Sekuru Babafe. He says African democracy is being crushed by greedy and selfish politicians. Election results are always disputed, leaving each nation divided and investors scared away. And citizens are given false promises and heaven on earth if a political party comes into power. But in most cases, it will be hell on earth after each election period, with citizens getting poorer as they wait for the next poll. That's Sekuru Babafe there. Your quick reaction to that.
Yes, I think where I was going, what I was saying to Babafe now, what I can say to Babafe is, you see, there's no problem in these problems are the ones which are going to be helpful in us crafting ways in order to deal with these problems. In the democracy we want to create for ourselves. I'll take you to even the United States of America and how it got to where it is right now. The challenges it had under the colonial days, were the ones they wanted to prevent in drafting their constitution. If they were under tyranny from soldiers, they drafted laws which did not allow anyone to use soldiers to act as political actors in any democracy. If they had challenges in terms of freedom of speech, that's the thing they crafted in their constitution and in their democratic governance systems. So challenges, yes, we have to really bring out all the challenges we have with the current system. And when this platform has been created for us to dialogue and the opportunity has been created for us to really craft out a governance system which works for Zimbabwe, these challenges are going to be the ones which are going to be discussed, and people have to come with mechanism to deal with these challenges. So yes, Babafe, I really note your challenges that people are really exploiting us right now, but we have to really come to really draft ways in order to prevent these things from happening.
Another contribution via our telephone line 495-112. Good evening. Ndaswera mkoma wangu maswera.
Ndaswera zvakanaka. Ndozvinozoga. Civil society basa rayo ndozaka na any good governance. Vanhu vachirarama vasingashupike. They don't really need for civil society. Because basa rayo ndokuona pari kukanganiswa negovernment. So the prime to be basa rayo. Ngatashore vanhu vavo. As long as three politicians ka ane mandate yekubaka kana vanyarari baba. That's why even in Sudan, there are problems all over Africa. Most of people are greedy. Kuba, lokukutukwaza. Last time we saw the regime change, whatever. Dai my politician atu votera wayoga. Achipa vanhu the both basic things. Kana dai personal needs that later. Jakatanga kuma 1990 ka. Not 1985 and I take it there mwa wote angari mzampi. Baona guys, warata kutora risiriko. And it but ever more personal look, what I'm going to for I can give you a chronology of Mascana, that I can send people. Asa Titan and Green, I think I do what to be Maran Dora and Nika. Takasanga Baba, as long as we don't change that mentality, Kuba would go good Kudura and Nikaza. Apana Katinenda. That's not blame anyone else except ourselves, Isusu. Our own problems are man-made. Apana Kambodu problem. That's why you they are very necessary. As long as Zimbabwe, we've got everything in terms of resources. But at now, look at Dubai. They've got no resources. They even import water. But because one or two on the four sides, they seem to have everything. We could be the Dubai of Africa. If we had people on the four sides, but they live as if they're going to die. They're never going to die. That's our biggest problem.
Right. Let's give Terence the opportunity to react to that.
Yes, all those problems have been noted, and that's why I'm saying, okay, what do we do now as a nation to really get rid of these problems? Because previously, we thought that these problems emanated from one man. We remove the leadership of that man. We are going to replace him with another leader. Everything is going to be okay. And now the solution which is there now is also to say we remove the current regime. We are going to replace it with a new set of leaders, but without the controls which I'm talking about, without defining how are we going to govern ourselves right now, we will also fall in the same problem. So right now it's really a time where we really need to sort out our governance issues and see that everyone has to move right now. Because this negotiation, everyone has to move. People have to go in uncomfortable places. But it's really a process which we need to do right now. That's what I can say.
A contribution from 2919 says the system has been monopolized by people who seek power for the sake of power. The so-called revolutionary parties have lost the ethos of the revolution. They have no appetite to transfer power to the next generation. This is a big indictment of the African political space. Zimbabwe is a typical example.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We are now at a crucial time where those who fought the revolution must bring on board the future generation. Because if the average age continues to be those of old men in our governance systems, we are not going anywhere. We have to really have that training of the values which were fought for the revolution, and those ideas must also be transferred to the younger leaders, to the younger generation, and this is the stage we are right now. Everyone has to really chip in and to really, for us to really find solutions which prolong which bring economic well-being to the nation of Zimbabwe, and also a governance system which is transparent. So that's the take which I can make, which I can put.
That there is influence from international players or from foreign countries on the outcome of the political situation in Zimbabwe or in any other African or developing country. Would you say that is a fact, and that as long as their preferred candidates are not in the corridors of power, then the democracy in Africa especially would always be a mirage?
Yeah, it will. The international community has we don't want to lie. It has its preferred candidates, and sometimes they really tamper with how the continent. That's a fact. They really do that, and we have to be careful as a nation. So that's what I'm saying right now. As a nation, we really have to decide on ourselves what we really need from these governance systems. Then we won't be affected by this international, because right now the international community, countries like United States and Britain, they are also having their problems with their governance systems. So it will be a plus for us to really devise our own governance systems right now, and they will really we will need to teach them what to do in these times, because we inherited a system which is already ossified. It has no room to change the governing system. You see how Donald Trump is being, what is happening in America. You see how so they have no right to even lecture us right now at the moment, because their own governance systems are not working. You see in Britain, their own governance systems are not working, because there are certain technicalities, even in our own democratic system, where we're saying the most important thing is representation, which goes down to the ordinary citizen. But there are technical rules which are there. Something like, I'll give you an example, like in our Zimbabwe, we have something like Section 129K. It's a provision which is in the Constitution, which says, when we see that you are no longer a member of a political party, we have the right to remove you from a constituency. But what are they removing? They are removing a person who was elected by a certain constituency to represent them in the parliament. But the parties now have these certain clauses which are enshrined in the constitution, which give them power to remove representatives which the ordinary citizen on the ground is elected. So we really have these situations which are there in the constitution, which are technical, which give power to certain party members, especially the top echelon of a party. So this rule in Zimbabwe has been ruled countless times to infringe upon the wishes of a certain constituency inside Zimbabwe, which is important, that is the important part about these elections we have. We choose a member who will represent us as a constituency alone, regardless of which party he is. So when we have parties infringing on this privilege we have been given as citizen, we have a problem with our democracy there.
Right. 9840 Donald, there is nothing like interference by international community in Zimbabwe. If I may ask, when Party X asked us to vote for it, were they assured that the sanctions would have been removed by voting date? This is a scapegoat by our politicians. We need true leaders.
Well, that's an opinion which is there. But I'm always saying that voting for Party X or Party Y at the moment, without fixing our governance systems, without really sitting down and really defining what we really want, there will always be problems with these governance systems, because it has too much power vested upon certain executive members of the government, where one person can either deploy military alone, where a political party is having rights over constituency representatives, where there is no decentralization governance structures. So we are having all these problems in our governance systems, where the citizen in itself is really resigning to the politician who has voted for everything, and there's no participation from a citizen. A citizen thinks that by voting everything is okay, and that's not a proper governance system, where citizens don't even know their roles. They have the role to produce in this country. They have a role to even govern themselves. They have a role to even, when the police commissioner was saying here, sometimes we don't have to wait for police to see that a certain member of our public is being infringed upon by touts. We as citizens must stand up and really deal with some of these issues alone as citizens. We really want to assign these responsibilities to someone else. That's why I'm saying the original Athenian democracy gave the responsibility of governance to every citizen who was in a particular population, rather than this thing we are doing, that we are assigning it to other people. That does not work. That does not work in Zimbabwe. We are really becoming a population which does not really want to be involved in our own governance, and that's not acceptable. That's not acceptable.
9785 goes on to say, chokwadi ndechekuti our government havari kuudzwa chokwadi, kungotaura chokwadi unenge wakunzi sponsored by civil society. I don't see anything bad in those civil society groups. We are used to being lied to, and they're going to say Taneta. And Baba Fei goes on to say, Africa is leadership crisis. Leaders are busy misleading their own people. So sad, what a pity. Does Africa suffer from a leadership crisis?
That's a difficult one, but that's what I'm saying now. We are giving too much responsibilities to these leaders, which is creating this problem. We have also responsibilities as citizens, and this is the problem with our governance system, that everything is upon a leader. Everything is upon
left
upon a leader. We also, as citizens, have a role to play in the governance system, and we want to establish this by the new governance system which we are going to create. It's not an issue that we only vote and we go away after 4 years or 5 years. That's when we are going to really ask about these issues. It's a daily basis. It's a daily job for us as citizens to really put these leaders in check.
Right, Terence. Just as we were talking, you are constantly making reference to the issue of sitting down and crafting what we really want as the people of Zimbabwe. Your comment on the ongoing political parties dialogue.
Well,
do you see it yielding any positive results for the country?
It's said that some of the parties who have a major influence are not involved in that process. It's really sad, and it goes to the point which I was saying, that sometimes we don't have to really ask upon international interference, like country, like what is happening right now, for another party to want to be involved in that. It's asking for an international mediator or a regional mediator. It's really sad, because we are the ones who are supposed to really define what we want from this system. So it's really sad that the key major players are not involved in this system. Like I cannot say, it's really sad. South Africa does not have any problems with the elections and some of the issues, because it really defined itself as a country what it really wanted as a nation, and there are no problems after elections. Now they are also moving, and one thing I want to say is a governance system must have with it mechanism that it changes according to changing times. Right now, the debate in South Africa is no longer about the proportional representatives on a close list. It's now the constituency based, where they saw that there's a problem that MPs are assigned to constituencies where the constituency does not know the MP, does not know who, because they only vote for a political party. So the debate is now moving in South Africa to say, why don't we change this system to this? So in Zimbabwe, we have just remained static, and we have closed the door on each other in order to really change our systems. Maybe it's because what happened in the birth of this country was a negotiated settlement which happened in Lakes. So and when a dispute happened in 2008, there was a foreign mediator in Thabo Bank. So maybe it's something which we have come used to, that we bring in foreign players to come and really come and discuss some of these issues. But we are now a 39-year-old country. We have to find a way to solve our own issues and really create a governance system which is changeable according to time, according to changing times. When times change, we have to have the ability to change the system, to reform it accordingly to the changing times.
And on that note, Mr. Terence Simbi, who is a socio-political commentator, thank you very much for coming through to the studio. It's always a pleasure having you in the studio and having these critical conversations.
Thank you.
Real questions, real answers on The Deep Dive. Weekdays, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Capital 100.4 FM, leading the conversation.